financial excellence, expert insights from a global business transformation Trailblazer. Hello, my name is Eduardo Chavez. I am the founder and CEO of ECM Consulting Group. ECM Consulting Group is renowned for assisting corporations in optimizing their finance organizations, critical processes, and enabling technologies to achieve significant improvement in key performance metrics like cash generation, profitability, and operational excellence. During today's podcast, we'll cover strategies to optimize general and administrative functions, methods for supercharging shared services and global business service organizations, insights on executing business transformation, and finally, approaches to achieving margin growth through business process optimization. Shared service centers or global business services are pivotal elements in modern finance landscape. As organizations seek efficiency and cost effectiveness, they offer centralized solutions like IT services. These delivery models provide different benefits to companies. Just let me highlight some of them. The first one is through centralization and offshoring of activities, it enables companies to reduce costs. Also, these models enable the standardization of process and technologies, which provides increased operational efficiency. Also, through centralization, companies create data hubs in shared service centers or global business service organizations, which allows to perform data analytics. The other advantages that I would like to highlight is these business models can change very quickly to keep up with the changing can launch new initiative. And finally, through centralized environment, is definitely easier to implement new technologies like RPA or AI. Understanding the nuances of shared service centers or GVS is essential. We are in a very competitive environment, and this information or skill is a must have for all finance professionals. To talk to us about this, I have a very special guest, Salil Bhatnagar. Salil is a vice president and a track record of improving business performance within main organizations. He has over 20 years of experience in strategy development, implementation of cost optimization initiative, and running shared service centers and GBS organizations. His industry experience expands across marketing. Without further ado, I'm gonna hand it over to Salil. How are you doing, Salil, this morning?
Hi, Eduardo.
Secrets to financial excellence. Expert insights from a global
Hello.
business transformation trail.
Hi, Eduardo.
Good morning, Salil. I apologize. I was experiencing some technical difficulties from my end. And well, I hope the audience will understand. Sometimes technology can be finicky. But in any case, Salil, I am very excited to have you on the podcast. I know that you bring a lot of experience in regards to business transformations and GBS, and I am looking forward to having an interesting conversation with you during the next 20 minutes or so.
Thanks, Eduardo, for the introduction and pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Oh, it's my pleasure. Let me start with I would say a foundational question. Can you describe to the audience what is your understanding about GBS? What is its usefulness for corporations, and also what has been the evolution of GBS during the last 10 years or so?
Sure, sure. So, GPS, in my view, is a strategic operating model. I think you mentioned that in your opening remarks, Eduardo. It's a strategic operating model adopted by uh, various companies to traditionally drive cost optimization, right? And within shared services or GBS, various levers companies have adopted to drive cost optimization, whether it is process improvement, whether it is offshoring, uh, whether it is streamlining technology that is being used, right? The shared
Right.
services model or the GBS model has evolved significantly over the past decade or couple of decades. Uh, Initially, as you recall, it started with centralization of activities, right? With the advancement of
Hmm.
technology, leveraging internet, you could enable offshoring and driving cost reduction, process standardization, using the technologies at that time. But now, if you look back at the last 3 to 4 years, with the significant advancement in technology, um, companies are taking it to the next level uh, with leveraging the data that the shared service of the GBS functions use to drive better business outcomes for the company. Being a strategic partner for the business is another thing that we are seeing, right? In helping the
Correct.
businesses drive growth. So the model has significantly adopted. The basic premise remains still the same, that hey, it's a strategic model. Uh, to drive now cost optimization as well as uh, top line growth, right?
Hmm. Perfect. Excellent. Thanks for your answer. My next question, which is already on the screen, um, we all know that a GBS model is predicated in many companies to help reduce expenses and also improve operational effectiveness. Can you, Salil, give us some uh, examples, general, of course, without going into the details as to how you have been able to optimize typical process like order to cash and purchase to pay?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a ton of opportunities in the space of order to cash and procure to pay. Uh, Besides what we talked about, the levers that we talked about, right, which is process standardization and outsourcing or offshoring or leveraging lower cost locations to drive cost optimization. Um, eh, there are certain process areas within sub-process areas within order to cash that I'll highlight a couple that are great use cases for shared services to drive value for the companies, right?
Hmm.
In order to cash, um, um, let's start with the order management piece of it. Now, many companies do not have order management as part of shared services today, but as companies are getting more mature, order management is becoming more and more part of shared services. And the key thing in order management is how do we drive the order velocity, right? Make sure that the exceptions are minimum, right? Leveraging tools these days more predominantly uh, for machine learning and robotics to drive or resolve exceptions in order management process very quickly. Um, Coming to credit, I think analyzing the credit history, setting up credit limits in a very automated manner without the human involvement, I think is a great opportunity. But I think the big one that I've seen here, which is very important, especially in the consumer product space, is around deductions management, right? If a company is in
Uh-huh.
And the product selling to big retailers like Walmarts and Targets and Costco is very common to see large number of deductions come through and takes a lot of time to process the deductions. But leveraging automated tools, robotics within shared services to drive speedier resolution of the deductions and improving cash flow and also improving profit margin
Mhm.
is I'm seeing a great value creator for companies. Uh, so
Okay.
besides that, Eduardo, the end-to-end process, uh, global process ownership, end-to-end process view, and global process ownership within GBS is also uh, a great example of driving productivity because now you have a full view of the end-to-end process and you know where the leakages are within shared services and you can plug those leakages. Um, in the P2P area, I think the big one I want to highlight is related to compliance, contract compliance. And we see a lot of leakage happening because of not enough focus on contract compliance. But with the tool sets available today and the skills that one can develop within shared services, a lot of value, a lot of leakages, I would say, can be blocked or stopped um, uh, by having that focus on that area. The other thing is duplicate payments. Now there are lots of tools available in the market to kind of prevent duplicate payments, but having in the shared services like AP process centralized allows the GBS organizations to have a holistic view enterprise wide to look at payments uh, and stop the bleeding because of duplicate payments. Also related to discount capture, improving the discount capture rates. Right now, you have a holistic view of
Mhm.
what we are paying to various vendors within shared services versus in a fragmented model, it's very difficult to get the holistic view. Yeah, does it
Okay.
make
All
sense?
right. If you allow me, yes, definitely, very clear. If you allow me to make a follow-up question, when
Sure.
you see a company that is embarking on GBS, let's assume that at the beginning of the journey they have they don't have standardized processes. Each country or location manage things in a different way. Is your perspective that those processes have to be streamlined and standardized at the local level and then move to a GBS environment, or not? What is your
Yeah, so
experience in this area?
there's a lot of debate, Eduardo, that's happening whether we should streamline the process first before moving into GBS or move into GBS and then streamline, right? In my
Hmm.
view,
Hmm.
either model works, right? I think one has to look into the horizon. What's the company's um, burning platform, right? What is the trajectory time horizon where you want to look at savings to come, right? Both models work. I
Hmm.
think it's what's right for that organization, right? What's the talent availability? What's the organization structure that can help, right? To drive, for example, to drive process simplification before moving into GBS, you got to build an enterprise capability to kind of drive that, right? Um, Typically, what I've
Yes.
seen is people who are having operations focus may not have the time to drive process improvement or focus on it at the same time, unless there is stranded capacity within the
Hmm.
organization. So building that it can be a challenge. Whereas when you move to a shared services environment, you have captured some savings because of consolidation, right? You've you have spared some capacity, let me put it that way, right? Which can then be deployed to
Hmm.
drive process standardization, right? So it becomes a lot easier, a
Oh yeah,
lot,
that's a great idea.
yeah, yeah, a lot of investment friendly option to go that path versus making the changes before moving into a shared services model, right?
Hmm. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Let me move on to my next question. Uh, In which areas do you think a GBS organization should focus nowadays to remain competitive for the business?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Eduardo. I think, in my view, uh, GBS organization uh, should strive to not only focus on cost optimization. Cost optimization is table stakes these days, right? You got to do things better,
Mm-hmm.
cheaper, faster, regardless. I think where the GBS organizations can add a lot more value is by strengthening the business partnership, right? Being a true partners to the business and helping the businesses uh, drive profitability or drive the objectives that the business is trying to achieve for, right? And shared
Mm-hmm.
services have a tremendous amounts of data and the skill set and the tools available to effectuate that, right? So um,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I think a GBS organization should focus their efforts. Now, there are certain enablers they need to put in place to make that happen, or maybe to make it more effective. One thing I want to call out is the end-to-end global process view, right? Um, which allows
Mm-hmm.
GBS organizations to look across the entire process versus certain activities within the process, right? So that's one area. Second, I think I want to highlight is the implementation of artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics. I think building that capability within shared services to allow uh, creation of value in a most cost-effective manner, right? So I think that
Mm-hmm.
is one of the
Okay.
area where GBS organization should focus. And not that the enterprise should. I mean, there are other pockets within the enterprise that would also benefit from that capability, but I think GBS organizations would benefit a lot more and have the opportunity to add more value, right? As more and more functions
Okay.
come within GBS, like I've seen in organizations where you have supply chain functions, right? As well as like in a retail space, like designing planograms and things like that, right? So uh,
Mm.
it can be done a lot more effectively, and you can see the results of a particular strategy uh, holistically and make any changes. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. My next question is forward-looking, I would say. At which point do you believe that uh, will not be necessarily cost effective anymore to offshore processes to lower cost locations? This question is the within the idea that technology is becoming very efficient, a lot of changes. So, at which point do you think we might hit the point that companies might just decide to improve things locally and not necessarily move it to uh, far locations?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a very interesting topic, Eduardo. With the advancement in machine learning, AI, robotics, I think a lot of, and as companies, um, you know, digitize the processes, so eliminate the human touch from the processes. You don't need a person doing that work, right? Whether it is onshore or offshore, right? So
Hmm.
what I see happening is a large part of the transactional processes, right, uh, would get eliminated from the human touch aspect, right? Like in my last
Hmm.
company I worked for, even things like tools like Ariba, right? Whereas you can implement a touchless AP process, right? So I don't need somebody to enter the invoice and process payment. It's all done automatically. Yeah, there may be a few exceptions. Now, exceptions would require a little bit more judgment. I think at this point, maybe hard to eliminate that, but I wouldn't be surprised in in a few years from now, that as we improve upon the artificial intelligence capability and technology, that even exception resolutions may get eliminated, right? So to
Yes,
answer
yes, that is
to
very
answer
true.
yeah, to answer your question, I think the value proposition for offshoring um, might reduce. However, from an outsourcing perspective, companies need to think about whether we need to build the capability internally for AI, machine learning, robotics, or whether it might be easier to leverage a service provider's capability to do that, right? So a BPO arrangement might still be worth evaluating with the lens of implementation of these capabilities down the line, like it's more of a strategic partnership, a relationship versus a low transaction labor arbitrage relationship.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yep. Thank you for your take on this one. I know that this is a topic that is still very controversial. There are many ways
Yeah.
of looking at this.
Yep.
Uh, my next question is how what are the key things that a well-run GBS organization can do to support the execution of a corporate strategy?
Yeah. This, as I said in my opening remarks, I think the GBS organizations becoming a true business partner, expanding the relationship with the business, with the overall corporation, and helping execute the overall corporate strategy or business strategy, I think is a key aspect where GBS organizations should be focusing on. I think there are multiple aspects on how GBS organizations can be set up for success to make that happen, whether it's organizationally alignment within the organization, right? Well, in one of the companies I worked for, it was a multifunctional uh, corporate services organization reporting directly to the CEO, right? Where
Mm-hmm,
GBS was part of the CEO agenda, right? And
mm-hmm,
enabling uh, the the prioritization of the capabilities that are required to be built within GBS to help execution of the corporate strategy, right? So if you have the right focus, you have the right priorities, then GBS would have companies will make the right level of investments to enable that execution. When I say investments, whether it's investments in technology or investment in resources that are required. Um, so
uh-huh,
uh, one thing I want to call out is GBS organizations, if set up correctly, are very well positioned to help the business grow the top line, right? Or reduce
mm-hmm,
not just finance operations costs or HR operations costs, but uh, drive cost reduction in other areas for the organization, whether it's spend reduction, right? Things like that, or maybe
mm-hmm.
transportation
Yep,
cost
yep,
reduction, right? So what it requires is also implementation of, enabling technologies for GBS, whether it is robotics or, machine learning, AI, which we just talked about, right? So I think having the right tool set, having the focus on data, right, uh, would significantly uh, help GBS organizations supporting corporate strategy, right? I mean,
yep.
it's
I agree with you.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, sounds good. The other the following question is about how do you see GBS supporting effectively the FP&A function in a company?
yeah. So FP&A function, I've seen in and out of GBS organizations, right? So traditionally, when companies begin the journey for GBS, the tendency is to leave FP&A, which requires a lot of data gathering, analysis, reporting um, uh, skill set out of global services. Um, Now, more and more companies they're evolving are moving a large part of FP&A function into GBS, and the reason being that GBS organizations, if they're performing the finance function, has insight into the data, have the skill set available uh, to gather insights from that data, create reports that are required by the FP&A function. Now, FP&A
Hmm.
function can, in most cases, continue to provide that the so what, right, of the for the data, right, the commentary or the analysis, the insights. I think those things for the data. Now, uh, in my view, as the GBS organization evolve, I see more and more that inside work also happening within GBS. I think with the advancement of artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, and things like that, right? GBS organization would be well capable to to support the FP&A function. I would say in a very very large degree. Maybe
Hmm.
com- maybe have the FP&A function completely reside within global services organization, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I see that happening. It requires evolution, requires change in thinking, and of course the right tool set and resources to be
Hmm.
able to happen.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm. And the willingness to change and also support from the C-level
correct.
executive to make
Totally.
the change happen.
Totally agree. Totally agree. It's an evolution, right? So when companies begin to see, as I said, like it is not the first thing that comes to our mind because the FP&A functions are not heavy resource centric, but they're right. They're not like large
Hmm.
organizations. Like if you see an order to cash function, collection specialists or payable specialists, they've got say hundreds of resources. The FP&A function may not have as many resources, and we would say, okay, am I going to get the labor benefit of it? But it's not about the labor
Hmm.
benefit. I think it's one needs to pivot the thinking in terms of business value creation versus how am I going to get labor arbitrage out of it? Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So uh, that's the change in thinking one needs to have, one needs to pivot to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very important aspect when
Yeah,
change is required.
yeah.
Well, these are all the questions that I had prepared for today, and I don't know if you have some final remarks that you would like to share with the audience before we wrap up this.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think we touched a lot of important topics, Eduardo, on this call. Um, I think I once again want to reiterate that uh, global business services organizations uh, as a, is a strategic tool or strategic structure that can significantly impact the performance of a company. Uh,
Hmm.
need to be set up right, need to have the right focus from the organization, need to have the right investment. But having done that, right, it can enable the organization significantly in driving the right business outcomes, right? So, um,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yep, I understand. Yeah, perfect. Okay, Salil, I really want to thank you very much for your time and your willingness to share your experience with the audience and myself. And I look forward to see you again in the near future.
No, thanks, Eduardo. Thanks for having me.
My
Take
pleasure,
care.
and have a good day. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.